Talk Sheet. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the November 22nd, 2013, the pre-Thanksgiving edition, and tonight's special guest is N. Stephen Harris, who's got a 20-year career in the comic book industry. He's done all kinds of things, and he's done a lot of work with some very well-known people. Welcome to the show, Stephen. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Well, appreciate it. Well, I'm glad to be here.
You're coming to us from New York, and you said a little bit earlier that the weather's not too bad, as far as you know, because you were lucky enough not to leave the house today.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do need to get out the house, but sometimes this thing we do called comics has us holed up in the house for a little while.
Well, that's not bad.
Before we know it, we know that the day's over and it's probably colder outside and dark already. So, yeah, I've been inside all day long.
Yeah, I'm not particularly fond of the way they redid daylight savings time, because now I think it starts getting dark around noon here in Chicago or sometime like that. I'm not exactly sure. So you mentioned that you were working all day today?
Yes.
And what were you working on, just out of curiosity?
Oh, just some knickknacks for New Paradigm Studios, getting some last minute things in for the Watson Holmes book that's coming out that I did in December. That's Watson Holmes number 6.
Before we run down all of the work that you've done, which is probably going to take about 3 or 4 hours, so we may run long, everybody. I'm just letting everybody know. Now, are you a native New Yorker? Is that where you grew up?
No, it's not. Actually, I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in 3 towns in Jersey. A town called Plainfield and Westfield, New Jersey, and then most of the time in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. And then from there, in my second year of college. My third year. My third year in college, I moved to New York City, to Harlem in particular.
Right, and you've been there pretty much ever since.
Yes. I moved to Harlem, and I moved to Brooklyn in '98.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's talk about your as an artist. Which, I mean, would you consider yourself an artist first? I mean, mostly in terms of your talent.
Oh, wow. I don't really do that, what I am first type of thing. It's I'm all things and I'm all things, and what's first is what the moment dictates. So, I'm an artist. I'm an African American. I'm a young man. Well, not so young anymore, but I'm an artist. That's one of the things I am, as an artist.
Right. I mean, I'm not trying to pigeonhole you or anything.
No, I'm not saying you are. That's just how I answer the question. I'm not trying to put you on the defensive. That's just how I see things. It's one thing and it's a big part of who I am. Is an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So that portion of your life, that portion of your skills, that portion of your talent. About how old were you when that kind of started manifesting itself?
Oh, let's see. Maybe first, second grade. I remember the earliest recollections I have is maybe drawing on the counter table of my grandparents' house or grandparents' apartment in Plainfield, New Jersey, doing these scenes. It probably goes back earlier, but I remember doing these scenes of tanks and soldiers and stuff like that. And but the big turning point that I can pinpoint was when Star Wars came out. And I would draw. Prior to that, I was just drawing rocket ships. But after Star Wars, I was drawing X-wing fighters to the best of my ability, and TIE fighters. This was in third grade, and that opened me up to Japanese animation, and that just took me to another level as well.
And wait, well, how did you run into Japanese animation at that age? Was it on television in your area?
Yes.
Because, of course, here in Chicago, we didn't have very much of that at that time.
It's funny because it was, again, at my grandparents' apartment. They had cable. At that time, cable manifested in getting channels from Philadelphia. Because, the area in Jersey I'm from is primarily New York, the tri-state area.
Mm-hmm.
So I get New York stations. So but we got Philadelphia stations, and that's how cable was back in the late 70s and early in the 80s. And so we would get, and the first thing I saw was I think either Marine Boy or Speed Racer, and then what really blew my mind was Star Blazers, which is called Yamato.
Okay.
Space Battle Cruiser Yamato was called Star Blazers here, and that really blew my mind. And then later on Channel 5 here in New York City, WNEW, our regular stations that based in New York, they started airing Battle of the Planets, which was called Gotcha Man in Japan.
Now that I think about it, yes, we did have Japanese animation because we had Astro Boy, we had Gigantor.
Yeah, I didn't see those. Yeah, those
yeah. And so those sparked your imagination even at that young age. I mean, third grade or so. That's like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah. I mean, Star Blazers. With Star Blazers, I saw I think around when I was in 4th or 5th grade, and I started drawing the battle cruiser. On American TV, it was called the Argo, but in Japanese, it was called the Yamato after the World War II battleship.
Right.
And so I would draw that, this was in my time of period. In this period, I was teaching myself, so to speak, through trial and error. And so we had no VCR at the time, and so this show would come on like once a week, and so I would have to see it and learn what I missed the previous time I drew it. So I would draw a big battle scene, and then go on to the next drawing, and then add in what I didn't add in the last time. So I would just have to remember what I missed and how the ship was formed and what details I missed on the ship in order to get it right. So I was in the drawings that I did, I would see progression in how I drew the spaceship.
That's pretty intense for someone your age.
I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, did you have encouragement from like your family and something to kind of push you ahead, or were you just so driven that you didn't even need that push?
It was a combination of both. I mean, my parents they supported me. On my father's side, my father not particularly. On my father's side, my grandmother and his sisters and all of my grandmother's family on that side of the family were pretty much artists. My uncle was an artist. He would draw all the time. My aunt would draw, and other aunts and family members my grandmother, her family's from Kansas, and they were all artists. They would all draw. They're artists and they're writers, so they write, and what they write is usually the family history.
Okay.
So I've come across them. They have a whole bunch of writings and pictures of the family and whatnot. But yeah, that comes from that side of the family.
So I mean, it's like you had a really good example, and kids generally do what they see their folks doing or people they like, or
But I didn't really see them draw. I didn't see too much of their work. But I mean, it was really encouraged when I was over my grandmother's apartment, and then when I was over there, it was like a great go over there instead of going to babysitter's house, because that's where I was primarily, and I hated going over to the babysitter's house. But when we'd say there was a day off from school, we would go over this is when I lived in Scotch Plains. We would go with my grandparents in Plainfield and stay over there instead of stay at home or go to my grandparents. Instead of going to the babysitters, we would go to my grandmother's house, and I would draw over there. There was a friend I would hang out with that was in the same apartment area or same apartment complex, and we would draw together. We would collaborate on drawing these big large drawings, or I guess large as was like 17 by 11 or 12 by 18 or something like that. And we would do these like jams on these paper, and we would combine different shows. We would combine Star Blazers, combine Battlestar Galactica, combined with Gotcha Man, all in one drawing. So maybe a drawing of the Battlestar Galactica in there, some Vipers, some Astro Fighters or Cosmo Fighters from the from Star Blazers or Yamato, and some and the Phoenix will be in there too somewhere, or the
right.
God Phoenix from Gotcha Man.
And so essentially, what you guys were doing was you were borrowing from other people to create your own custom creative universes.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, we weren't doing comics or anything. We just doing these large
drawings, yeah,
large space battle scenes of the Cylons, coming to attack or whatever, or the Common Empire or the Gamelons, stuff like that. Whatever show took our fancy.
And that went on about how long? I mean, did you? I'm guessing you kept drawing.
Yeah,
through, your elementary school into high school, what have you, right?
Well, it's in stages. I was drawing throughout, but it changed because after up till like 8th grade, I wanted to draw. I wanted something more. I wanted to tell a story because I've been watching animation, and I wanted to tell a story with my artwork. And so I said, I was thinking to myself, how can I tell a story? And I thought, no animation, but that's too much work. So I said, hey, comics, that's the next best thing. And at the time, for a period of time, I was collecting Star Wars comics and Battlestar Galactica comics, and so I started drawing my own comic book, and then I started getting back into comics and collecting the superhero comics like X-Men and Spider-Man and Thor and stuff like that. So I did my own story, and this was by myself, and just doing a story between 8th grade and 9th grade, the summer of 8th grade and 9th grade, or the summer of me going into 9th grade. And I started, designing my own spaceships, and I had to challenge myself because if I'm going to do a comic, I got to learn how to draw people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that may have been a catalyst for me to start collecting comics again, to learn to draw people. And some of my early influences in drawing were maybe Paul Smith, Garcia Lopez, John Romita Jr., into Arthur Adams, Rick Leonardi, then later into Barry Windsor-Smith, and a primary John Byrne. The primary influence of mine became Garcia Lopez.
And so, I mean, you had all of these examples in front of you. Plus, I mean, obviously they're giving you, obviously even if you're mimicking, you're still picking up insight into.
Oh yeah.
Well, into anatomy, into action, into emphasis, So when you started out, doing your own comic, it sounds like obviously you had your own stories and you did your own drawing.
Yeah.
Were you in black and white? Were you in color? Did you start out in color right away? Yeah.
I did color. I used my markers. I had markers. I colored them. I even copied some comic book covers, some X-Men covers. Like some of the issues from X-Men, like some John Romita Jr. covers I copied, some John Byrne covers I would copy. And I had a whole stack of comics I wanted to copy. I even copied a Daredevil page, and then after a while, I said, you know what? I'm getting tired of copying. This is like maybe three or four large drawings into it, and I said, I'm getting tired of copying. I'm going to do my own. I started getting ideas of my own composition. I started getting ideas of my own characters. So I started doing that. I started creating my own compositions and my own characters, and still doing my own comic book. And it was just one story I was writing, and I was just writing it. I was just making up as I went along, and it featured the video games of that time period. And the video games of that time period were Intellivision, ColecoVision, Atari, Odyssey, and the cartridges that supplied games for them, like Magic, Parker Brothers. And so I would have, the game consoles that I had, of course, were the good guys, and that was Intellivision and Atari, and that it was the Atari 5200, not the 2600, but the Atari 5200. And they were against ColecoVision and Odyssey, and so I would use the game consoles. The game console would be the battle cruisers, and that would make up the fighters. I designed the fighters, and some kind of storyline behind that, and the heartbreaking thing that had happened to me was I lost the first 4 pages I drew on the school bus coming from school. And I lost because I was distracted. I kept myself distracted by messing with this girl on the bus. And so, yeah, it was my. And so, in allowing myself, in causing myself to be distracted by this. Well, I'm not putting blame on her. It was me being a boy and being obnoxious, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And so, by the time we got off the bus, all that adolescent energy just went down a peg because of when that realization came to me that I left my portfolio on the bus, and so that all that nonsense stopped right there because I fell into a depression when I discovered I lost that on the bus along with those pages.
And I'm guessing you never got it back. Nobody returned it to you, or
no. Like a month. So between a month, within a month's time, in between a month's time, I was debating whether I should start over again or leave off where those pages left off. And
sure.
I decided to keep the hope alive by continuing the story where I left off, with the hopes of get the portfolio back.
Let's ask the important question. Did you get any play from this woman, the girl you were messing with on the bus?
Oddly enough, 2 years later, she became my girlfriend.
Well, see there, you didn't really lose anything. You were laying. I mean, you were laying groundwork, right?
I suppose so. And odd thing is, she asked me out on Valentine's Day. Oh, now I hope she's not listening. Oh goodness, I know I'm just talking too much. But
well,
but,
I mean,
yeah,
don't get yourself in trouble. But I mean,
yeah.
But seriously, a lot of people don't pay attention to that part of the fact that the things that are going on around you can have an extraordinary amount of influence on what you do. I mean, when you talk about you lose a portfolio, and it did depress you. Because you thought, oh man, this is obviously it was some good work. This was good work. I did some good work. I had a great idea, and now I have to start over again, or somebody stole my stuff and they're going to do it. There's all kinds of things that I can imagine going through your head. Being a teenager and everything. But obviously, it didn't hold you back with the woman, and it didn't hold you back from moving along and getting your art on, as they say. So, still not a bad thing. About how old were you then?
I was a freshman in high school, so I was like 14.
Yeah. Now, going through high school, I mean, you already had the concept of creating your own universes, your own characters, and things like that. Did you pursue that through high school? Excuse me. And while you were doing it, did you get any kind of encouragement from teachers who may have been acquainted with your art?
Oh yeah, I always got encouragement, and yes, I always got encouragement through my teachers, through my art. Just as long as I didn't do it during the class time. I remember my third grade teacher making comments about me doing drawings when I should be listening, but I don't think I really did too much in junior high school or high school. But I could be proven wrong, but I don't have any memory of just being distracted while school was going on to do my artwork. I would bring my portfolio. I would bring my portfolio at times to school to show people or to draw during certain periods. Because in high school we had free periods at the time, so I would practice the opportunity to draw during that period and show people my work. But I mean, my high school fortunately had drawing classes in it, and when I found out my senior year that they had the most. They bragged to have the most art classes for public school on the East Coast.
Wow!
And I took just about all those classes during my senior year.
And by that time, you had decided you were going to be an art major?
Oh yeah. That time I decided to continue my education in college, the School of Visual Arts. By my senior year, I decided I would go to college and learn and study art my junior year, but I was already accepted. I think sometime during my senior year.
And just out of curiosity, were you a pretty good student when you were in high school?
I was okay. I was average. I was
Yeah?
average. I mean, I got some A's, some B's, and some C's, and some D's here and there, and I got one or two failures. But
And was it because you were kind of focused on kind of focused on your art, focused on drawing, focused on creating, or were you just like an average person? I mean, I got average grades, probably below average grades until about my sophomore year, and then I figured out the trick to high school.
Oh yeah.
And well, yeah, I just work smarter. Oh yeah, repeat the things that the teacher wants to hear, or or surprise them, hand your stuff in early once, things like that.
Yeah.
and I hadn't decided. I mean, when I was in high school, I didn't even think I was going to go on to college, because just because of the neighborhood, the time. This was the South Side of Chicago during the '60s and early '70s, and so I didn't even think about it until 1969, the draft. They had the lottery for the draft.
Yeah.
My birthday was number 5, which would have meant I would have got out of high school, and unless I went to college, I think about 8 weeks later I'd have been in Vietnam.
Wow.
But I mean, like I said, a lot of the things that are going on around you influence what you end up doing or how you end up where you end up. Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty cool that you had not only established talent, but you had established interest. And you wanted to go ahead and pursue this into college. So, I mean, that's pretty good because a lot of kids don't normally, they don't settle into what they're going to be or what they're interested in until a little bit later. Now, when you went to college, where did you go?
I went to the school for large. Pretty much college was not an option. I mean, I think I get the feeling that college was an option. I mean, was going to college was definite. Not going to college is not an option. Not going to college is not an option. So I went to school of visual arts in New York City. I pretty much applied. I looked at a couple of schools. That School of Visual Arts, Ducray, which is in Plainfield, New Jersey, and my ideas were. I looked at Parsons and Pratt, but not really. I don't think I visited them. I'm not sure. But the only two places I went to interview were School of Visual Arts and Joe Kubert. And I wasn't accepted Joe Kubert, but I don't know. No, maybe because I already told them I was. And Joe Kubert himself interviewed me, and I told him I was accepted at School of Visual Arts. So I don't know if that had any bearing on me not being accepted or what. But what's odd about Joe Kubert was that they asked for a black and white photograph of me. I thought that was kind of odd to ask an applicant for a black and white photograph of themselves. But yeah, I went to School of Visual Arts.
Did they tell you why they wanted the photo?
No, it was part of the application process for some reason. I don't know.
Oh, well, maybe because from your name, you can't tell. Yeah, I said it. Well, are we going to accept him on diversity, or how are we going to do that? Well, anyway. Okay, so it was what it was at that time. I think about all the places I applied, and nobody ever wanted a picture of me.
Yeah. I mean, I met somebody, in my second year that transferred from Kubert. And he was a African American young man. And I said, how many black people are there? He said. This was like in 88, 89 at the time. He said, "You're looking at him." Right. I said, "No." And now you're gone. So what you say? But yeah, that was it. But yeah, and so it was. But my years at SVA were good years.
Yeah. And so how did things grow? How did you kind of feed your talent? I mean, you already had the drive. You had already been into world building or universe building. Actually, universe building. You could do characters. What did it kind of push the envelope a little bit further? Did you develop more? Really work on your skill sets. How did that all work out for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I had. Well, that has a process because my senior year in high school is when I had my first art teacher, actually, I think.
Okay.
Barring, your art classes from junior high school and high school, junior high school and elementary school, this art teacher, was hard. She gave critiques, and she could be harsh at times. I mean, when I was applying color, one time she asked me if I was colorblind. I said, "What?" So I mean, I could no longer have a quiet arrogance about my work when people would question why I did this, why I did this, because I was an artist and they weren't. So
right.
You don't really know. I can say myself, but you don't really know what you're talking about because you're not an artist. But she was, and she would give critiques. She would give hard critiques. I mean, I'd say hard, honest critiques. I've come across hard critiques also where it's like belligerent, but I've come across a very honest critique, and that was I couldn't say anything. I couldn't say anything quietly to myself that she wasn't. She knew what she was talking about, and so I had to. So my ego and my confidence took a hit. And I had to push through that.
Right.
So I had to I had to learn to draw what I saw in front of my face and try and I had to learn to draw what was in front of my face and stop trying to stylize it, and just draw what I saw, and not draw what I think I saw, what I wanted to see, or how to make it more exciting. Just draw what I saw, and just do that. And so,
it sounds like she was trying to push you into really paying attention to the fundamentals.
Yes.
So that you were grounded in those, because with anything, whether it's art, whether it's for me, whether it's playing tennis, whether it's art, if you have the fundamentals, let's say if you're tired, or if somebody brings something up on you as a surprise, or all of a sudden things don't go exactly the way you see it one way, you draw it that way, and then someone says, well, maybe not exactly this, maybe something like that. If you have the fundamentals, there's a grounding there. There's a skill set that you have that can carry you through.
Yeah,
and maybe, was that kind of how she was pushing you that way?
You can say that. Yeah, you can say that. And the key word is skill, because there's a distinction, not necessarily a difference, but it's a distinction between skill and talent.
Mm-hmm.
Talent sometimes is motivated by inspiration and a God-given gift. Skill is applying that talent whether you are tired, unmotivated, uninspired, and get you to a point where you may become inspired and inspired or motivated to draw. And she would teach us in this class, to feel to feel that moment when your left brain transferred to your right brain.
Right.
And again, it was reiterated again many years later when I joined the studio, and a friend of mine named Gray would talk about skill and talent. And
right.
I had to relearn some things and he helped me apply having a skill and be able to use a skill to get you through until your talent was inspired or motivated to draw again, or essentially to loosen you up.
Mm-hmm.
So you can start drawing because sometimes when artists, and myself in particular, when I'm first drawing, either when I'm first drawing a project or first getting up to draw, it may be a little stiff, and what I drew in the early part of a project may look a little different during the latter part of the project. Or if I'm doing a storyboard, the first frame may look different than the fifth frame. I may be a little more looser. I may be more looser, and the page, the drawing will come up much more confident, much more worked out, and just look better, given that time. Yeah.
You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the November 22nd, 2013 edition, and we are talking to N. Stephen Harris, a 20-year veteran in the trenches of the comic book milieu, whichever way you say it. I've never been French, and don't pigeonhole him as just an artist, because he mentioned he's also a black man. And he's a whole bunch of other things too. So don't make the mistake that I did. Well, come on, man. I'm just, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help out anybody who talks to you in the future
Yeah.
So that they don't fall in the same trap. Okay, so anyway, you're in school, you're learning the fundamentals. Were you still working on your own creative worlds at that time, at the same time, or had you really, kind of buried yourself in learning the techniques, as you said, building your skills so that it augments your talent?
Yeah, like you said, like you were saying, like I was saying before, and like you said, what how I grow into this and what motivated me and what I did. The first stage was my teacher. Well, one of the stages was my teacher at high school, and then in college. Well, before college, I worked at AT&T in the summertime in the art department. And I learned how to use a few things. I learned how to use a brush to ink. In high school, I actually learned to use airbrush because that was one of the classes we had in high school. We had drawing 1, drawing 2, painting 1, painting 2, airbrush class, a photography class, and a lettering class. I took all those classes. They also offered an advertising art class, but they didn't offer the year I was a senior. They offered the year before and the year afterwards, so I missed out on the advertising art class. So the reason I say that because I also used the airbrush in AT&T during my summer job. So I learned, and so I'm thinking I'm going in ahead of the game at SVA. I barely came in on time, if I came in on time at all, because the competition there was stiff. Now, and so you have a whole college worth of students who were probably the best in their high school.
Okay.
And I was one of the top 3 best in my high school. The reason I say that, and we all of us were named Steve. There was myself, Steve Harris. There was another brother named Stephen Green, who's doing great work in Newark, New Jersey. And another guy named Stephen Fine. I don't know what he's doing now, but he was a fine artist. So I was Stephen Harris. I was a comic book artist. We had Stephen Green, who was the graffiti artist and DJ, and you had Stephen Fine, who was a fine artist. So you had 3 different artists at the best in the school at that time.
All named Steve.
All named Steve. So as I get back on track, so now in college, I was like almost overwhelmed with all this talent that people just drawing out their heads and making this stuff look like real life and all this rendered and whatnot. And I got critiques from upperclassmen that were like, "Wow, I mean, can I really draw? I mean, because you guys are coming out harsh on me." And that I can't just draw what I think looks like. I look at reference. I got to do this and that and the other. I'll get overwhelmed by that. But at the same time, I knew I need to learn. So in addition to learning from my teachers, and foundation year doesn't have a focus. Foundation year has a whole bunch of classes, so I didn't really take any art. I didn't really take any comic book classes that first year, and I would do my comic book stuff, on the side. During that time, and I would go to the upperclassmen for critiques, and there were 2 in particular. One I called the hard master, one I called the soft master, and I got that from a G.I. Joe comic book, from a Snake Eyes story. Anyway, that Larry Hama wrote. I think he drew it also. So I would call one brother the soft master because he would look at my work and say, "Oh, wow, this is great," but then he would go in and start critiquing it, and he would give me good critiques and wouldn't hurt my feelings. Another brother named what I call the hard master, he would look at it, study it, and say, and go right into what I did wrong, and it was harsh with it. And so that helped me though. That helped me get through, and that helped me decide what majors to become too. These guys helped me decide what majors to become. And funny enough, they said a lot of them said don't become a cartooning major, become an illustration major. And so I took their advice, became an illustration major, to become more well-rounded in drawing. And their reasoning was, drawing comics was just drawing illustrations in boxes, which is not, but that's what their reasoning was at the time. And so I became an illustration major, but comics is much more than just drawing illustrations in boxes. Comics is storytelling. So and that's a whole other thing you have to learn in and of itself. And that's one of the things they also helped me with. So that was another stage of my development as an artist, and I became more and more confident coming into my second year and on. And I would actually draw in front of people, whereas before I didn't. I would just take him. I would show him my work I did before and have him look at it, and then second year I would ask you to draw, and people notice that. Say, well, people notice that. Say, well, you kind of come out your shell. You're actually drawing in front of us before you didn't. I said, okay. But that was one stage of my development too, and I took a lot of drawing classes, other classes that revolved around illustration, helped me with drawing and composition, because I really like to compose the image too and compose a scene, and that's really fun for me to do.
You mentioned a little bit back about the difference between your hard master and your soft master, and what's really important about what you said is you went through that period where you were critiqued and where you had to you weathered the critique well, because what you did was you took something away from it instead of just wanted a cheerleader to tell you how good you were. Right. And a lot of people today, especially those starting out, they don't understand that good critique makes them better.
Yeah.
When they hear somebody say, okay, this is weak, and then the moment somebody says that, before they could explain why, where they could get some benefit from the criticism, or understand maybe even the industry better, so that they could succeed maybe further on down the line, they get all upset. They start crying like they start, they don't understand the fact that is just as an important part of learning your skill and practicing your art as any other thing, any other feature as well, any other component. So, you went through that. You obviously weathered through critiques well, because you saw the utility in it, and you still kept going back to him. You still kept going back to him, and he still kept critiquing you hard. But I would imagine that what you learned from what he told you not only stuck with you well, but it served you well in terms of you producing whatever it was you wanted to produce. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
That helped, and then some helped too. Because that was part of the process, and my process continued. My learning process continued on, because that was my first year at SVA. That was my first year at SVA.
Yeah. I'll tell you the corollary for me. I'm a writer. Novelist and screenplays, and people say, "Oh, could you read what I did here, or could you read my short story, or whatever?" And then then I'll read it, and I'll say, "Okay, this is just my opinion, but." And the moment I say this is just my opinion, but, they've already decided, well, I don't want to listen to what this fool has to say, because he didn't just automatically tell me that my stuff was great. And that's, again, the process you went through was rigorous, but it was necessary, and what it did was it made you a better artist. And a lot of people just don't see that. They don't see that.
Yeah, and it helps because as comic book artists, we're out in the public eye.
Right.
And it doesn't stop, because you'll get detractors, you'll get critiquers who will look at your work, may not like it, and that's that's fine. So I've gotten good reviews, I've gotten bad reviews. So they're people's opinions. So I gotta be ready to accept that. I gotta be ready to accept the good with the bad, and see if even if the crowd the criticism is invalid or valid, you gotta be prepared to see it. You gotta prepare yourself for it, because it's going to come.
Right. Right, and you can't be thin-skinned. I don't care what kind of creative you are. If you're going to be thin-skinned, then just, write a diary, paint your walls in your apartment or your house, or whatever, because the moment you decide to do this commercially, then your work is fair game. And rightly, wrongly, or fair or unfair doesn't play into it at all, because people are going to say what they're going to say. Or they say opinions are like, that orifice. Everybody's got one. Yeah. Well, it's true, because you've worked with some really high-powered people. You've worked with some great people, doing the work with DC Comics, things like that. So you have already a history of having worked with people who have established their popularity, if not their talent. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you could have a half-ass drawn Batman comic, and yet it'll still sell, even though it wasn't so and so or such's best work. But in all of that, people are going to judge you. People are going to judge whether you live up to expectations or not. What are some of the hardest things that you had to weather from a critiquing side? What were some criticisms that people may have leveled at you that you had to pay attention to, and maybe even adjusted your approach or changed what you did as a result? Did you run into any situations like that?
Yeah. I mean, wow, okay. I mean, it's one thing to get critiqued as a student. It's another thing to be critiqued as a professional when you're a professional a few years in. And,
right.
I got some critiques when I joined the studio that it was like hard to take. I'm saying I'm a professional. Why did I take these criticisms, these critiques? And I had to just sit back and listen to them because they were valid. I mean, and my work became better for it. It's like after my years of Aztec on the book. I mean, after my years on the book of Aztec, and actually I was only in the book a year. So after my time on the book of Aztec, I joined the studio, and I got it was a good studio to be a part, and I got critiques there, and it helped me. And it was hard to take at first, but it helped my development because there was some things I was doing that I look back now, it's like, oh my goodness, I did that. One thing I did was I drew heads too long, I drew mouths too big, and I drew mouths in a way that, like as my friend would put it, like a hole in someone's head.
Okay.
So I took that to heart. I looked at mouths again. I looked at heads again and made the adjustments. And so that was, and then the critiques I had when I first was in school was I think I'm pretty good. And then I hear someone say, "Oh, you got potential." I was like, I think I'm it now. I don't think I have potential. I think my stuff's pretty good. So those two that come to mind immediately right now at two different stages of my development as an artist.
Yeah. And, I can't critique anybody. I can't talk about anybody who draws because I still only put 3 fingers on each hand because I can't get fingers right. So, I mean, that's the other thing. You have to know your limitations. Have you ever run into a situation where you...
Well, you still have, I mean, as a viewer of comics and stuff, you still have your opinion. I mean, you buy what makes you, what speaks to you, because you won't buy you won't buy art that makes you, that looks bad to you. I mean,
that is true. Yeah.
So you still have an opinion about it. It's just where we come in, where artists come in. We're trained to have a certain skill set to make to get you to react to what we do. And some people are good at it, some people aren't as good at it. And we have ways of articulating that others may not, because we're trained to.
Mm-hmm.
We're trained to do that. I mean, I had to be trained to look at a picture because, I mean, when I was in school, I'm not putting myself or artists on the upper echelon. I'm just saying when I was in school, I had to be cognizant of when I'm looking at a piece, how my eye flew on it, how my eye ran along the piece. I mean, I didn't do that before. I looked at the piece and liked it or not liked it. But then I would say, watch how your eye follows along with the composition and what's the artist trying to do. So that's a learned skill.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Okay, so you've got all of that experience and everything. Let's talk a little bit about some of the projects that you did that were early on, and what your best takeaway from each one. Like when you got your first professional job, what were you doing?
Okay, I was at a time where I was assistant to Dennis Cowan.
Okay.
This is in 1991. It's my first job, and so actually we're like 22 years off. 22 years ago in September was my anniversary of my first job. And
yeah,
that was for a comic book company called Personality Comics, and I my first job, I made the mistake of taking on too much. And what I did was I did the pencil and inks for a job that was due in 3.5 to 4 weeks. And my first job. And at the time, Dennis got me the job, and then he went away for 2 weeks. And then we came back. The people were in his ear about how horrible a job I did for the book.
Wow.
And so he was upset with me because he put himself out there to give me a job, and
right.
I messed up. I mean, I got the job done on time, but I didn't do a great job on it. The best part of the job was the first page, and after that, it was pretty much downhill from the first page.
Okay.
So that was learning process. So I learned to take on what I could take on, and not look at the money, and just look at the project and do what I can do in a time period, and do the best I can do within that time period.
Sure.
And I also I met in this a lesson I had to relearn because my first job I was the first artist on the character called X for Dark Horse Comics, and with that job and this is back in 93 I think.
Okay.
And it was I had to do 8 pages a month. It was a 3-page story. It went in the anthology book, the Dark Horse Comics anthology book. Not Dark Horse Presents, but Dark Horse Comics. That was a different anthology book than the Dark Horse Presents. I said do 3 pages a month. 8 pages a month for a 3-part story. And so, but I would wait until the last 10 days to do those 8 pages because I'm thinking I could do a page a day. I'm pretty fast like that. But that wasn't the case. I ended up being a day late each time I did the book. Each time I did those pages. So and the work wasn't the best it could have been at the stage of my development at that time period. I could have done a better job at that time than I did, and so I had to just learn from that as well. So that's in like '93, and at that year I had 2 books come out. I had a Fire and Ice story that was in DC Showcase '93 that was written by Elliot Maggin, and then I had the Dark Horse book come up that was written by Jerry Prosser. And so, but I mean, I had published work, but both of them weren't the best I could have done at the time.
Right.
I mean, they had good things in it, but I could have done better at the time. So I had to learn to take my time with the project and do the best I can and not rush it.
I mean, all of those are good lessons that you picked up.
Yeah.
And obviously they didn't knock you out of, contention for work or knock you out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think, I mean, were you fairly quick to pick up good work habits, better scheduling, more realistic expectations?
Yeah.
It sounds like you realized right away that you had a problem with that, and it also sounds like you kind of corrected it right away. So, I mean, I see that as a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to reach back into what I learned prior to, because like I said, I was a student. I mean, I was an assistant to Dennis Cowan. I was a student of Michael Davis Michael Davis had a class in Harlem called it took place in the art center called the Children's Art Carnival, where I later became a teacher there. But in that class, Mike has a gift of gab. He could talk. He could tell anybody anything. And he at the time he moved from doing illustrations to comic books. And one of the comic book properties he did was Etc. for Piranha Press, I think, or Paradox Press for DC Comics. And he did a Shadow Limited series for DC Comics as well. And he did, and so in his relationship with DC Comics, he negotiated a deal where he had his students come up to DC Comics every Friday night. Now these are Black and Latino young men primarily, and 1 or 2 young ladies that would give their. Now these are teenagers. We were teenagers at the time. I was 20, but most of us were teenagers from 15 to 19. Give up on Friday night and go talk about each other's work in DC Comics in the meeting room, and then meet again on Saturday and talk some more about comics or the comic work, the comic art form, each other's comic art form. So we would critique each other. He would have us do a page a week, fully painted, and by the end of the year, we would have 32 pages where we could show editors, a fully painted book where we could show editors, and what we could do. We would write it, draw it, and paint it. And each week we would come and meet and critique each other's work on what we did the week prior. And that went on. And that was his class.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on from there to Dennis Cowan to become a student. I became his assistant, and then I started doing my own. I started doing my own. And when I not long after I left the studio, or a little before I left the studio, they while I was in the studio, they were planning Milestone. And so I wasn't in on the meetings. I wasn't in on the meetings, but I was there when the meetings happened. So it was Michael, Dwayne McDuffie, the late Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Jim Alsey at the time, and Derek Dingle were doing their planning for Milestone. And this was primarily in Dennis' studio. And then Milestone launched. By the time Milestone launched, I was trying to get my own. It was continuing my own freelance career.
Sure.
And so that was going on at the time.
Yeah. For people who want to take a look at N. Stephen Harris's work, you can go to www.nstevenworks.com. And would you say that's probably the best place to take a look at what you've got? You've also got you've got some art up at DeviantArt as well. I'm sorry?
DeviantArt is best. DeviantArt has more current work, but both are good places to look. DeviantArt primarily has my illustration and my comic book work. NS Works or N. Stephen Works, the website has comics as well as my storyboard work on that site.
Okay. All right, so that's N. Stephen Harris, all one word, STEVEN, Harris.deviantart.com.
Yes.
Somebody popped it up in the chat room. That's great for the people who are online today. For those of you who are picking this up as a podcast, you're just going to have to move the slider back, listen to what we said a couple times, and then type it in. The realities of doing an online show.
Yeah.
One of the things that I admire about what you just said was you guys were doing essentially continuing education to get better and better and better at your art.
Yeah.
And that you had a mentor who was interested in helping you hone your talents.
I can't say it's continuing education because it was more or less concurrent education. Because when I first joined the Children's Art Carnival, it was my third year in college. I was still in college and going to those classes up in Harlem too.
Sure, but in terms of people today, a lot of people think, oh, I'm an artist, bam,
yeah.
And then that's it. They have no desire to work further to improve their art other than what they do, and don't realize that external critique can help you develop faster because other people, can see. I mean, it's like me trying to edit my own work. I can't edit my own writing because my brain tells me what it's supposed to say.
Right,
instead of what my eyes should be telling me what it actually says. You
may have to look away from your art for a few days to see it more objectively, and you may not have those few days.
Right, and then for your part, you guys were going. You obviously made a more of an effort of it because you continued on. You went through the year, and then at the end of the year, you actually had something to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't go through that, and I'll be honest with you, I don't see a lot of people. Excuse me. Once they've decided that they are something, and even you said that you avoided that trap. Once they've decided that they are something, oh, I am an artist, oh, I am a writer, and from then on, the almost like the learning process is secondary to everything else. I mean, I still read about how other people write novels. I belong to a writing group, and if it were not for the critiques and the observations of other people who see my work outside my head, I don't think I would be good. And I see a lot of utility in that, and I see also a lot of maturity in that. Going back to the part where a lot of people can't take critique about their own work because all they're looking for is a cheerleader, not somebody who's willing to help them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're still concurrently going to school. You're doing. I mean, what would you call this? Writing seminar, writing group, whatever.
It was a comic book class. It was a comic book class.
Okay, so it's an actual comic book class.
Yeah.
And you guys are really, honing your skills. So at the end of the year, tell us a little bit about that process where you got to the end of the year, you had all of your drawings done. What came, how did you guys, did you assemble your work and publish, or what went on then?
No. The job, the assignment was to do a 32-page graphic novel or book, and that featured a DC Comics character. So it had to be DC Comics, and we couldn't have Batman in it. Batman in it. Because at the time, there was the first Batman movie that came out with Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And so Batman was all the rage. And so I was a hardhead, but I had Batman in it, but I had him getting shot.
Yeah.
So Batman was in it, he got shot, but my character was Black Lightning.
Okay.
And Black Lightning had to so it was some kind of worldwide conspiracy that had going on, and Black Lightning was the target, but Batman ended up getting shot, and it led to South Africa, and I involved the Teen Titans and the JLA, and so I forgot how I wrapped it up, but anyway, so when we finished that book, it coincided with a convention, the Fred Greenberg conventions over in New York City that would happen every year, and so we would go to different artists or editors in the business and have them critique our portfolios. And the artists at the time were, we looked to were John Ritter Jr., Neil Adams, Dave Mazzucchelli, Walt Simonson, and some others. The artists I went to were John Ritter Jr., David Mazzucchelli, and Walt Simonson. I avoided Neil Adams because he was hurting people's feelings.
Okay.
And it's not like that I couldn't take critiques, but I didn't want to be abused while taking the critique. So
there is kind of a right way and a wrong way of doing that. I mean, if somebody's just handing you a beat down, that's not helping anybody. That's feeding their ego and not helping you at all.
Well, his critiques were legendary. And I got good feedback from all three of those guys. I did later on go to Neil Adams in '98 when I was already a professional, and he liked my portfolio. So there you have it. He had one critique of mine, and that was the same thing like my friend gave me, was my figures leaned a little bit to the left because I was left-handed, so I had to be more conscious of that. But that was years later. But so that was one thing we did, and also one of the hot artists at the time was Larry Stroman. And in each kind of the Bob Greenberg, Fred Greenberg conventions would happen, was that I would always seek him out. And when he was at the time, he was on Alien Legion, and so I would always make a beeline to him whenever he was there and have him look at my portfolio, and have him give me tips, critique on penciling and how to get a pencil look a certain way, and all the silly and not so silly questions noobs or rookies would ask. So,
you're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. This is the November 22nd, 2013 edition, and we're talking to N. Stephen Harris, illustrator, artist, black man, many things because I was admonished, and I tend not to forget.
You were not admonished.
Well, I wasn't admonished. And for those people who are looking for his art, his illustrations, and things like that, he has his own page or his own area over at DeviantArt. So you would go in Stephen Harris, Stephen Steven Harris .deviantart.com. All right, so you mentioned, let's talk about where you go, what you do, the kind of people you meet. You mentioned that you've been to Chicago a couple of times with Turtell, and how much travel do you get to do in a year to meet, to go to conventions and things like that? And do you meet a lot of your fans? Do a lot of your fans catch up with you? And tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. I mean, we each time we go to these conventions, whether it's New York Comic Con or Chicago or Philadelphia, fans. I get a few fans here and there to come up to me and say, hey, they know that I'm coming. I may get a couple people that may have a box of books, and a couple of them are mine. They want me to sign. And just a couple of years ago, someone was waiting at my table. It was the first year New York Comic Con had the 4-day schedule, and a guy was waiting by my booth to have me do a Deadpool commission for him. I said, oh, this is great. So, yeah, and just at Wizard this year, someone asked me to do an Aztec commission for them. So sometimes if people know I'm coming, they'll have either books for me to sign or a commission for me to do one of the characters I did from years prior. And it's the thing is with people who are trying to become independent creators, it's tough to get people to look at your books. And the particular dynamic for black independent creators is we want to be the actors and the main characters in our books, and it's tough when you have a perception that black comics don't sell, and so we have to. So going through comic book companies, going through the retailers is a tough sell. So what we do, what we're trying to do with our friend Turtell is called the Black Age, through conventions like East Coast Black Age Comic Conventions,
Right.
by Joseph Wheeler in Atlanta, the Andre Batch and Maya Crown out in Detroit, trying
Detroit,
to
yeah.
Yeah, and you have other people in New York City. You have Alex Simmons doing the Kids Con. You have Ray Felix doing Bronx Heroes that are really independent, indie friendly. You have Jerry Kraft, John Jennings, and Michael Jonathan Gales doing the second annual Black Comic Book Festival at the Schaumburg. We're going straight to the community to help drum up support for our stories and our books. So we won't have to keep going to the retailers or to the mainstream saying, listen, look at us. Instead we go to our community and say, look at us. And we, instead of just you having to settle for Black Panther and Storm, which are great characters, you could have or Falcon and others. You have other genres of characters, whether it's sci-fi, superhero, day-to-day, but just to have a more three-dimensional look at us rather than us being sidekicks or supporting characters. You have us as the hero, the villain, and all those in between.
Well, there's two utilities for that. I mean, obviously you're going direct to the source, or at least direct to your potential market. But by appearing and by showing up and by meeting people, especially kids, because comics are hopefully a gateway intellectual drug for kids. Where they pick up comics and then maybe they go and they read books, or maybe they decide they want to create their own content. You're also creating your own market. You're creating your own customers.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story that when I was reading Thor, I'm thinking reading Thor would help. Well, I'm thinking reading Thor, which I was wrong. But I mean, it's still reading Thor made me less intimidated to read Shakespeare. Because
Okay.
Thor had all this and now and whatnot, and I thought I could handle Shakespeare, but I was wrong. But I still engaged Shakespeare with less intimidation, even though it did take a while to get used to it. But I'm saying that's how comics helped me in one instance.
I'm sorry?
That's how comics helped me in one instance.
Oh, yeah. But,
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think back to the comics that I read. My parents, kind of slicked me because, I liked, DC and Marvel. Mm-hmm. And then I had a real weird other kid on the block, and he liked Archie and other stuff. And then my parents would buy, these historical comics or comics about science and stuff like that. And because it was a comic, of course I read it, And that was how they got me to do that. And something else that you said reminded me. You do all of this travel, you do all of these appearances. One of the things that I'd like you to consider doing, actually, I'd just like you to do it, is when you are going to have an appearance, whether it's in town there in New York or out and about, would you post it on the BSFS events calendar? Because the cool thing about that is let's say you come to Chicago and somebody here is looking, they go to the events calendar to see, well, what might be happening in Chicago, and they go, oh, man, look, Stephen's going to be here with, at C2E2 or, whatever it might be, or even if it's just going over to the DeSable Museum to be with Tertel, if we all get in the habit of doing that, then, we've got one central gathering place to support each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that would be really cool if you do that, because it sounds like you're busy, man. It sounds like, not only do you work, but you're out and about. So do that, and then that way people can catch up with you. I probably won't see you in New York or anything, but like I said, we spoke briefly before the show, and I would love to meet every single person that I interview, and, I'll take you to lunch. But I can't do that if I don't know when you're going to be here. But
right.
Thanks for doing that, and then that way, people can catch up with you. Let's talk about some of the things that you're doing right now that you might be most excited about. I mean, what are some of the things that you're really getting into that you're having a lot of fun doing?
Oh, well, I just had fun, really a whole lot of fun drawing issue 6 of Watson and Holmes.
Okay.
And that's coming, issue 6, that's coming out next month. Along with, I had some fun doing the previous project, which was Voltron, issue 7 through 12 by Dynamite Entertainment. And that's coming out, that trade, the collected edition or the trade paperback of issue 7 to 12 is coming out in December as well. It may be coming out the same week as issue 6 of Watson Holmes.
And these are pretty much wide distribution. These are fairly. And I apologize that I don't know as much about the comic world as I could. But it's good that again, people can pick up your art, check you out. Obviously, they can look you up online. So again, when these new things come out, also post that too. Just do a blurb, do an announcement, because, man, it's for the most part, we have to help support ourselves. Because mainstream is mainstream. Mainstream does what it does, and like some people are doing here locally, here in Chicago, getting to the point where we can have our own visibility that stands alone, that's not dependent upon anybody else, no handouts from or leavings or breadcrumbs from mainstream, well, DC, Marvel, whoever. It's good to help support each other. So it'll be great to let people know where your work is, where they can get it, and also when it's coming out. Because I wait for certain books to come out. I wait for certain things to come out, movies or whatever to come out. And I think that our work, the work that Black creators do, is equally as important and certainly needs whatever push it can get.
Yes. Yes, and I would definitely add you to the list. I mean, I do promote, through my, and each show is very important for people to know, for young or people who are just coming into doing self-publishing or independent creator. When you do shows, it's good to have a pad to have them to have people write down their name and address to compile a mailing list. Because maybe someone can't buy your book at a time, but they'll take your card or put the name down on a mailing list that you can let them know what you're doing. And so over the past 6 7 years, I've compiled a mailing list from different shows I've been to. And I always bring that book. I bring a book wherever I go and have people sign the book. And I send updates of what I'm doing periodically through this mailing list. I mean, up to now, I have like 800 people on the mailing list right now. This is like through 6 7 years of doing these shows. And so I promote through email. I promote through Facebook. I'm on Twitter now. I promote through Twitter, and now we'll promote through your site, Black Science Fiction Society. And I should have been doing it because I've been a member for a few years now.
Well, not everybody catches on right away. I was just thinking of something. What was I just thinking? Oh man, it was good too, and it just left.
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I do too. But one of the things that I am curious about is let's take your like a work schedule. I mean, all of us who are content creators are essentially entrepreneurs, unless you've got a big studio behind you or something like that. How do you manage your mix between work and your art and the business of doing business?
It's a fluid process. It's fluid. I'm trying to make it less fluid. Every now and then I try to do a schedule, and I follow a schedule for a period of time, and then I just lose the schedule, and I just what happened. But but ideally, I'm trying to get myself to promote at least 2 times a week, and I got to promote 2-pronged. My promotion is 2-pronged to the fans and to the people in businesses, like whether they're editors of comic books or art directors of storyboard companies or ad agencies or production companies. So, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was curious because in the bio and you've talked about doing work for ad agencies. If somebody, there are people out there who are listening to this who want to know, how you can get the kind of exposure where you can get that kind of work. And you just talked about, you do the promotion, or at least you try to touch that part of doing the business, regularly. What do you do? And if even if you have a few minutes to talk about it, how did you get into that part of the work? What was the exposure that led you to be able to do illustrations for ad agencies or even internal campaigns, what have you? How do you manage to get in there with all of that?
Well, okay, it happened first. Well, I got my first storyboard job on staff, and that helped me. I mean, I learned how to do the job and the storyboards, but really, then I had to learn some more after that job didn't work out too well. I was assistant again. This is like this is like almost like a career change, but not quite.
Sure.
But But I was assistant again to a storyboard artist, and he helped me with my portfolio with one color, and that one color was maize, and that changed my whole portfolio. It was like the color was called maize, and that really made my artwork pop. And so I got one job through a production company called Cap TV back in 2000 through the studio I was working in, which and Gray helped me get that. I was through a contact through Gray that helped me get this job, and then I did a couple jobs for them, and then I just still work on getting more jobs, and then my wife actually got me in contact with a schoolmate of hers college he went to, and this gentleman worked at Ogilvy and Mather, and he saw my portfolio and showed his portfolio to his boss or his producer, and they liked it and they were impressed with my interview, and so I started doing freelance work for Ogilvy and Mather for about 3 or 4 years, and then as the thing about the advertising world is people move around. People don't stay in one place for too long. So people may be at one ad agency for a couple of years and move on to another one. And so as people branched out to other ad agencies, they remembered me and asked me to do some more work. So one guy who worked at Ogilvy and Mather moved on to Arnold Worldwide. Another person moved on to Berlin Cameron. And someone moved on to Young and Rubicam, and so therefore, so I started branching out, so my name got out there, and I started getting a lot of work from these ad agencies, Berlin Cameron in particular. So that's it. So once you're in, so it's not all about who you know, but that helps. But the main thing is doing good work and being professional. That's what will keep you in the job or in the field.
Yeah. It sounds like, obviously a good reputation helps.
Yeah.
But it also sounds, and in the advertising agency, there's a certain amount of networking that carries a long way too. Because as you said, if people are used to working with you, your name is going to come up again. Yeah. And then also good word of mouth and the relationships that you maintain, appear to be very pivotal in at least getting people to know who you are.
And you got and the thing that I did that I need to work. I need to. I had those relationships, and since people, and the thing that helped me, was hurting me too, was people move around, and so I got to reconnect with some of these people who moved around and reconnect with them to build relationships with them as well. And I have to some extent through LinkedIn. That's a great site if you use it. If you use it or use it well to connect with people in your related industry or related field to get contacts and work those connections.
Yeah.
I've seen
and how much? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen many people on LinkedIn who I've worked with at different companies, different ad agencies or different production companies before.
Well, and people who use it well, and what using it well really consists of is, keeping your contact information, keeping your work record current, because every time you do something new and you post it up there, the people in your circle get an announcement like so-and-so just moved to BBD&O,
Right.
And if you recognize that name, then you go, oh, well, that's good. Maybe I'll give them a call and remind them who I am, that sort of thing. How much time do you think you spend in a week doing the kind of digital networking, the online stuff, do you use, social networking? Do you, all of the different things that you do? What's kind of like your weekly routine in maintaining your online persona?
Well, it's funny. Weekly routine is whenever I do it. It takes the whole day. So,
okay.
So, but I'm trying to get more refined with it. So this past week, I spent at least 4 or 5 hours doing that, and I refined it by getting on more. I've gotten on more social media. But before it was just Facebook and email and LinkedIn. Now I'm on Twitter. So and also DeviantArt too. So
right.
I managed to link up DeviantArt with Twitter and LinkedIn with Twitter and Twitter with Facebook. So if I go into it with a plan, it cuts down my time considerably. But it's still
if you know what you're doing, if you plan ahead, right?
Yeah, because the process. I think I'm trying to think what takes so long. One thing that takes so long is writing what you want to write. Because you could write much longer in Facebook than you can in Twitter. Because Twitter's only 150, 180 characters you get.
140, yeah.
140, okay. And so, but that helps too, because you just keep things short and sweet because you want to get wordy as well. So, it just like say, this is what it is. This is what I'm doing. Here's we can check it out. You know, maybe one maybe a really short sound bite in there. So So yeah, I'm getting more. Well, I think I'm getting more refined with it. And if I could do it like 2 good days a week, and maybe some little small things in the middle. Because what I was doing, one thing I was doing a random daily, or I called it a random daily, and I called exercise and shameless promotion too. I gave the title on Facebook.
Okay.
So I would post something I did back in the day on Facebook. I mean, I would post something I did back in the day. I'll post it on Facebook. I'll probably post it from DeviantArt and post it on Facebook, and just get people to look at my stuff and see what I've done before in relation to what I'm doing. So they'll get an idea that I've been out there for a while, and I've done more than just draw comics. I actually created a couple of characters for some of these companies, and then I've done other things, whether it's storyboards, some illustrations for outside of comics, or they're storyboards. So I haven't done it in a while, but I'll do something I've called an exercise and shameless promotion. So I give it a sound bite and then promote it and then put it up there, or do, like I said, random dailies. My random dailies turned into exercise and shameless promotion. So
yeah, but it's not. You can't look. I mean, for you, and a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that being a content creator is a business. Yeah. And and I'm just saying this just to tell a story. It's not anything illuminating or earth-shattering. But I just published a second book, another book. So I had to go in to all of the places where my information is, Amazon, LinkedIn, what have you, rewrite everything to accommodate this new information, and it does take time. You don't want to write anything stupid. You want to write something that's compelling, that's interesting, but you also don't want to bore the hell out of people or anything. You want to give them the information so they can just quickly look and go, oh, that's interesting, decide whether or not. And being able, I mean, you call it shameless self-promotion, but essentially it's the business of doing business.
Oh yeah.
If you don't do that, you're not working to in the effort of you making money in doing business. So I understand what you say, what you mean when you say shameless self-promotion, but having to be able to do that, having to be able to sell yourself is one of the most important parts of being a content creator, because a lot of people don't know how to do it. Yeah. Yeah,
and these days it's made so much easier and cheaper, because back in the day I was using envelopes and post office.
Right.
To get my work out to editors and whatnot, and not really having a connection to fans. This way, I've got a connection to fans, or it's people who or potential fans, or potential people who are interested in my work.
Plus, you maintain a database, right? You collect cards and email addresses, correct? So that you could be directly in touch.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people look at that as a pain in the ass. It's like, oh, I don't, so what do you hear from your fans? I don't, and the fact of the matter is, these are the people who are paying for your lunch. These are the people who pay your bills, it's
time, because I collect those email addresses, and I gotta type in those email addresses into my email list, into my email account,
right,
one by one, and sometimes it's it's a couple pages of emails I got to type in. So if I'm going to your Comic-Con, there's a couple pages. If I'm going to ECBAC or East Coast Black Age Comics Convention, there's a couple pages.
Now, that's a good question. Now, you've got all of those email addresses in your address book. Do you have them separated out by region and things like that?
No, I don't. I have this name.
All right. Later on, I can recommend you some contact management software that could even save you more trouble or more time and effort. and give you a higher yield in your, in the effort of communicating with those people. Because, I mean, there are business tools out there that a lot of entrepreneurs never find out about because, very few of them talk to, let's say, like me, a computer nerd, or a computer consultant. I'm not really a nerd, not anymore, not at this age, but a computer consultant. Well, I mean, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I had an ex-wife. Well, no, I have an ex-wife. But one of the things that she always used to say is, "Are you still playing on the computer?" And I'm going, "I'm making money,"
Yeah.
But the thing is you have dedicated yourself. You have decided that it's a priority to maintain contact with the very people who consume your product.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't think about that. Some people will go as far as, oh, let me use constant contact and send out some really flashy emails and things like that. But once you build a relationship, I mean, as you said, you show up at these places, people know you're there, and they come to see you. They came there to see you. They got in their car or whatever they did, and they came to see you. And that's very important in terms of being an entrepreneur, because in most cases we have to grow our own customer base.
Yeah, and it's humbling too to see someone come out for me. And it's humbling, and I have to be careful and not let it go to my head too, because it can turn on me as well. It's just not. It's just you gotta keep. I mean, I have to keep this thing that people come out for me because they like the work I do, and I gotta keep doing the work I do and keep doing. And I'm not saying I'm not gonna grow, but I have to keep doing my work at a high level, or at the best of my ability, to respect and to honor that feeling or that appreciation that people have for my work.
Well, plus the public can be very fickle too. Somebody could mention something that's totally unrelated to your art, and people go, "Well, I didn't know that about him. Well, that changed. I'm not going to buy his stuff, or I'm not going to support, or I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that." So, relationship management in terms of maintaining a good reputation and not doing things that can sabotage you from an economic or a business point of view is just as important.
Yeah,
so the last thing you want to do is go to McDonald's and, butt in front of, a 4-year-old kid who just wanted a Happy Meal, and everybody goes, "Ooh, look that's that Stephen Harris guy who does that art. Well, I'm not going to buy his stuff anymore. Did you see what he did to that little girl?" I mean, it could be I know that's a silly example, but sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, look at, what was her name? Rachel Ray? Well, she used the N-word. So we can't really no, was it Rachel Ray? Who was it? I mean, one of those cooking ladies. I don't know if it was Rachel Ray.
No, it was.
Who was that? What was her name?
No, it was Pamela. Was it Pamela? I'm not sure. No, something Dean. Something Dean.
Oh, Dean, yeah. So, Paula Dean. Paula Dean. Yeah. So, but it's very cool that you have the reputation that people find you approachable. And they want to see you. They want to see you, and they want to contact you, and that's pretty humbling. And I look at it this way. Eventually, very soon, I will be going and having to lecture a little bit about what I write, because it's from a sociological point of view, and I just know, as I'm sitting here in my chair, if I show up at one of these places and there's a bunch of students in there and they all jump up and they give me a standing ovation or whatever, if these people make me cry, that's what they're going to do. I mean, if that's what they do, because, I mean, sometimes some of that can be overwhelming when you talk about how humbling it is to meet your public and to find out that they support you that way. Even though it's humbling, it is still pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's something they say that something they've seen in my work that touches them and that inspires
right.
them. I was like, wow, it's incredible. I mean, and I can't get a big head over that. I just got to keep doing what I do and just understand that it's a great thing that someone shared with me. And that's I affect them like that. And I can't just get big headed, and then because that could turn around and that could turn around and work against me too if I think I'm entitled to that.
Right.
I mean, there's one thing being there's one. I mean, there's two things. There's two types of entitlement. In feeling entitled to succeed, meaning you won't give up. You'll be driven, and you feel like you're due, or you feel you have to make this place for yourself. And then there's entitlement. There's a bad entitlement, thinking people should just bow down to you because you think of who you think you are.
Or they're not important enough to at least give a kind word when they come up to you to laud what you do, and then you go, look, don't bother me. Don't you see I'm eating dinner here or whatever? You know, there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that kind of that kind of exposure to the public, and that kind of, you know, the public, the way they relate to you. So I mean, you look at all of that. How do you, I mean, in most cases, how are you in touch with your public? I mean, do you've got Facebook, you've got DeviantArt, do you meet some of your public that way, or is it mostly face to face? And how do you balance all that out?
I mean, no one's knocking on my door every day, but people reach out to me on Facebook, and some people, and mostly it's through the conventions. I'll see people through conventions. I mean, there's not long lines. It's a few people that come through every now and then.
Sure.
Whether it's in Philadelphia at Black Comic Convention, at ECBAC, or Onyx Con, or wherever I am, people come up and say what's up and say, hey, we love your work, and the people who I see who I recognize, who are familiar to me, that I've seen over the years come back and forth and come back and look at each year. They're waiting on my new stuff to come out, and so I try to have something new every year for them. Whether it's the mainstream stuff I do every now and then, or the create your own stuff I do, I try to have something new out every year for each for the round of conventions I do. And the latest challenge is getting the latest issue of Brotherhood of Friends out.
Okay.
Yeah, so I haven't had a new issue of that since 2010 or 2000, maybe 2008. So I'm really trying to get the third issue of that out. But but since then I've had a couple issues of Ajala, which is a young teen, young female teen, based in Harlem, and I've had Vampire Huntress that was the comic book adaptation of L.A. Banks's novel series, late L.A. Banks. Then I've had Voltron, and now it's coming out is Washington Holmes. Also, a book which I collaborate with a friend of mine. The co-creator of Ajala. I did a book with him called Inheritors. It's his creation. I just did an issue of that a couple of years ago for him. So every year I try to have something come out new.
Well, you want to have a decent cycle so that you keep your name out there, and also people in the back of their minds, even if they're not consciously thinking about it, they may be thinking, oh man, look at the time, it's near the end of the year, such and such should be coming out around this time.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is because it's return business. There's a certain amount of familiarity. And going back to the way you started out, do you do much community outreach and work with kids?
I haven't done as much in the last couple of years, but I'm available to do that. And for instance, I've taught. I was certified as a substitute teacher for a couple of years, and I've worked with arts organizations in New York to go into schools and teach for a number of weeks, for a couple of days, a number of weeks with the school's program. So I've done that for a number of years. And I'm available. Matter of fact, I just taught I filled in for an art teacher last week or a couple of weeks ago with her comic book class. And in December, I'll be going out somewhere to do a career day with somebody for someone's school. So I do that as much as I can. Whenever someone asks
when you show up as a substitute teacher, do these kids do they have any idea who you are?
No.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
One time what happened, it's not in school. I was in Midtown Comics in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, and I was, my name's on the register to, as one of the people who get comics, and
right.
I get a discount, and I said my name to one of the cashiers. He said, I said Stephen Harris, right? And he said, and Stephen Harris? I said, yeah. He said, wow, yeah, I just want to shake your hands. And that was really a really great experience for me.
Yeah.
It happened one time, but that was really, really cool.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Last November 11th, and I'm never going to forget this because it was the first time I went into Walgreens to get a prescription filled, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Refilled or whatever. And so, the woman there is, she says, okay, what's your birth date? I told her my birth date, and she said, what street do you live on? And, she saw my name. She said, are you William Hayashi, the author? And dude, that's a red letter day that I will never forget. I'm serious. I mean, it's a small thing to everybody else, but I mean, when some woman at a checkout counter goes, well, are you William Hayashi, the author?
Yeah.
That was a big deal to me. And then for you, I mean, how cool was that? Somebody's standing right there, you're checking out, and they go, hey, I want to shake your hand because. So I mean, it's like a validation of self. It's a validation of the fact that you've worked hard, you got your name out there, and people recognize it. So I mean, that's pretty cool. And the cool thing about what you do is every time you go in there is a chance that somebody may recognize your name, recall your name. They may bump into you or, whatever. So, I mean, that we don't get a lot of accolades, until reach a certain threshold of popularity.
Yeah.
But I think that's pretty cool that you went through that, man.
Oh yeah. It's very rewarding.
Yeah. What does your family think about where you are now in terms of your popularity and where your art is?
Oh, they're very supportive. When my wife's 100% behind me, and it's.
I'm sorry.
My wife's 100% behind me.
Uh-huh.
Yes, she helps me get even through the tough times. She helps me get through this. She supports me. Helps me. If I need some money to purchase a table or something with that, or buy books, or buy books for my own books, to sell. She'll help me with that. And so I mean, if the situation arises, but yes, I have great support.
And I'm imagining it's got to make a huge difference, and it's also got to be a good ego booster too, that people believe in you to that extent.
Well, I try. Yeah, it's an ego booster, and it's a responsibility too.
Well, of course, yeah.
I mean, I see it more as a responsibility, because we all do need ego to help us with our self-esteem, but I try to check it and just take it more as a responsibility to keep doing good work and doing quality and professional work.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever and wherever my artistry takes me, I'm not going to stop my growth, and hopefully, as I go as an artist, the people who like my work will follow along with it and not like it, because plenty of times there's an artist that grow into something different, and their fans couldn't get with them. Sometimes it's a natural process that we really can't help. It just happens.
Yeah. Now, what is your long-term goal, or what are your long-term plans? Mm-hmm. Strategically, do you have for kind of keeping what you do fresh enough and interesting enough that you can retain, your audience? And of course, we all know that your audience evolves. People come in, people come out. Or like you said, people find, oh, well, this doesn't really trip my trigger this time, but, I'm sure he'll be doing something else later on, and people don't forget you, but they find something else. what have you got kind of, how are you looking at maintaining, the freshness of what you do and the popularity of what you do? Do you have kind of like a specific program or something that you're looking ahead to do?
Well, a couple things. I wanna grow into or learn to do concept art. I mean, I did some work for Rockstar Games to do some concept art for the games of Red Dead Redemption and LA Noire. And I would like to have my properties, whether it's Brotherhood of Fringe or Ajala, go into animation or movies or TV shows or games, the next level to garner a larger audience. So it's not. I don't have a plan as far as my artwork to be geared towards people. Just trying to get what I'm doing to reach a larger audience. And I'm working with my partner Robert Garrett, who does his own books. He has his books out called Galto, and we had him on the show before. His properties Galto, Inheritors, Tool Boy. We're working together on Ajala. We co-create this title, this property, and we're trying to do things with that. And sometimes in moving our properties, we have to take detours, or we have to consider taking detours and work on other things that may give us some light and maybe have that be a venue or a way to get our stuff in through there. So we're working on some things. I want to get into details, but we've got some pretty impressive contacts from this latest show that just happened, the Urban Action Showcase, which was a action expo of action art, action stars, and action actors to come into New York and to display like actors like Michael Jai White, Kelly Yu, Grandmaster Ron Van Cleef, Timax from The Last Dragon, Fred Hammer Williamson came in, and some other people who work on action movies. Maybe they may be stunt coordinators, they may be martial artists that do what they do. And this brother named Demetrius D'Angelo had organized this whole thing where he had comic book artists come in and display their work and to sell their work, and also to talk to or network with these people, whether they're actors, producers, directors, or whatever what have you, that work within Hollywood or the TV production of this genre. And so we've got some connections that we may be moving we may be working with some people in that genre to further what they do, and also maybe hopefully further what we do.
On your part, are you also constantly improving, like the tools you use? You mentioned, probably doing maybe some animation and doing some new things like that. Do you kind of keep up with the technologies and software and things like that so that you're honing your skills for, quote, the next thing, unquote?
I'm aware of them. I haven't been able to get it's in my plans to get the Cintiq or the drawing tablet, and it's in my plans to maybe get Manga Studio as well. So
okay,
because I think I was talking to a fellow artist of mine that these tools help him. He does a comic book on the Cintiq, but I'm not thinking about doing that. But maybe my storyboard work I could do on the Cintiq, and
right.
to cut down use so much paper, because I use a lot of copy paper to do my storyboards, and so that may help. And I don't think there's a whole lot of resale value for storyboard art, but there's resale value for original comic book art. So I don't really want to do my comic book art on the Cintiq.
Well, that's also something that kind of comes to mind. How have you kept a lot of your earlier art? And and because what a lot of people who do what you do is they will go ahead and they will take the time to assemble, to put together a pretty cool coffee table book of their art, of their early times, kind of like a retrospective of the kind of work that they've done.
Yeah, I
and
myself. Yeah, I mean, I was compiling one, but I had it stored on a I had a showcase of my professional work. And I had it stored on an external hard drive, but the hard drive locked up, so I can't access that right now.
Well, believe it or not, save the hard drive, because I can refer you to people who can get everything off that hard drive. These are the people who do the work and get the airplane black boxes.
Oh, great! Oh, that's awesome.
And unfortunately, they're also the same people who do data recovery for the FBI and everybody else. But no, because I mean, there's a lot of people who started. Okay, let's look at your career. You started out 20 years ago. Well, if you've got digital media from 20 years ago, there is a good chance it doesn't work. And a lot of people think that, just because the hard drive went, or that old computer, I can't boot that old computer up, or things like that they've lost their work. I'm sure there's a treasure trove of that kind of content out there that people may have thought was irretrievably lost.
Right.
And the other thing is, when you look outside your expertise, but when you look at print on demand, for people who do novels, people who do books, things like that, with print on demand, it's not very expensive to you pay your initial fee, you get things set up, and then once it's done, it's done. And if somebody wants your book, it's not like all of a sudden you've got to keep 250 books in your basement. Somebody can just call it up, send it to the machine, and there's your book. So the other part of why I ask this is because what you do and what you've done is of interest to people who also are artists, young artists just starting out. How do I do this? How did Stephen get to the point where he's at? What kinds of things did he have to go through? And then they could pick that book up and they go, oh my God, this person's head looks like somebody shoved a pipe through it, or however you described the way you had trouble drawing mouths. Yeah. And that's just as encouraging to people, because we have a tendency to feel, when we see somebody at the height of their competency, or at a very good level of competency, like they've been that way all the time. And we all know that that's not true. Very few people have such natural talent that all of a sudden they just burst on the scene, fully whole,
Mm-hmm.
And that's another, it is a process, and it's also another means of outreach, because if you put something like that up, it's low cost. People go, so here's the N. Stephen Harris story.
Yeah, because the professional book I wanted to do was one of the books I wanted to do that just showcased about professional history and then I wanted to do another book that has volumes from my sketchbooks. I keep most of my sketchbooks from going back to '95. Because I have a sketchbook, with the work I did with Motown. Because I did a comic book. Motown published a comic book through. Well, they produced a comic book which was produced by Image.
Okay.
That was back in '95. I did that. It was called The Crush. So I mean, I have sketches going back that far, even further back. And I would like to do a sketchbook that had maybe volume 1 and volume 2, and what years they cover. So I have a sketchbook still in my possession.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it lets people know the evolution of an artist.
Yes.
All right, so you want to maybe get into animation, you maybe want to do film, or whatever. Where do you think you might be? Let's say between 5 and 10 years from now.
Oh goodness! Hopefully on maybe on the set of a production for one of the books I'm doing, or maybe maybe on the set, or talking a deal about one of the books I'm doing, or on the pathway to that, whether it's an animated story or a movie, or live action movie of one of the books I'm doing. maybe I'm overseas talking about that, whether it's Asia or Europe or even Africa. No.
Yeah. How much attention do you have from overseas? Have you noticed much?
It's okay. There's one person through DeviantArt she's this young woman. I think she's a young woman that's in Australia. That's a Voltron fan, and so I see a lot of. She's a heavy Voltron fan that's become a fan of my work. A matter of fact, she didn't. Her first comic book she picked up was my work on Voltron.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she picked. That's why she picked it, because she's a big Voltron fan. Dynamite producing a Voltron comic led her to pick up the Voltron comic, and it was my work that she picked up. Now she's as well as a fan of Voltron, she's a fan of my work as well. And that was very humbling.
How cool is that you provided the impetus for someone else to explore their own artistic capabilities?
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. I mean, so whenever I tweet something on Twitter, she tweets it as well. She shares it, retweets it, and it's cool because, like I said, she's a big Voltron fan, but she's also retweeting my stuff that I'm tweeting about watching at homes. Mm-hmm. So it's
have you noticed any pickup of fans from down under?
I'm not sure. I haven't. But she says there's a whole bunch. There's like a whole bunch of like a fan group of Voltron fans that she shares my work with. So we'll see. I don't know.
Well, there's some potential. They got some really good scuba diving down there.
So we'll see what happens. And there's a number of international people on DeviantArt who are looking at my stuff from various places in Europe or South America. I mean, some of the DC work I've done has been published in South America, in Brazil in particular. And I have a German translated print of Batman Officer Down, which was the last DC book I did, which features Batman. Well, the Bat family suspecting Catwoman of shooting Commissioner Gordon, and so that was reprinted in German, and I have a copy of that as well. So it's very cool to see my work has reached the parts of the world, and there's a couple people on the continent. On the continent of Africa as well, from Zimbabwe, at least in Zimbabwe, I know. So I have one or two people out there who like my work. I don't know about any other countries on the African continent, but it's something that I look forward to growing and seeing where that takes me.
And finally, we got about another 5 minutes to go. As a black content creator, what I don't want to ask like a real heavy question or anything like that, but as you do what you do and you make the contacts that you have, and you're working in New York, which is a fairly large city, it's a huge market. It's I think that the second largest creative market after that whole LA Hollywood thing. Mm-hmm. Being a black content creator, what do you see as some of do you even run into big hurdles, or do you run into difficulty because of the fact that black content is still not very mainstream? Although I do think it's getting ready to bust out. I think that this whole Afrofuturism trend, or the sociology behind Afrofuturism is going to make it a big damn deal very, very quickly, like within the next 5 years.
I think
what are you thinking about? Yeah.
The hurdles is hard because there are hurdles, but sometimes it's invisible, and sometimes they're right there in front of you. Sometimes people are just honest with you, or inadvertently honest with you with their racism or their bigotry, and sometimes most times it's indirect and it's invisible. But I think overall, black people have gotten awareness of it. We've got to take control of this ourselves. And I think one big one big telltale sign of that is how well the movie did. That movie was it the Best Man or Best Man Holiday?
Oh yeah. I don't remember the exact title. Yeah.
Yeah, with I mean that surprised a lot of people. It overtook in Thor's second week. It overtook Thor in the second in its first week. It overtook Thor in the second week. Thor's second.
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't expect that. I get the idea people didn't expect that, and so I think we're making our own way. We have to see this is the power. We're all that we have, and the power is in our hands to control that and make that determination. Yeah, I think we're seeing a reflection of that.
Yeah, and the other thing is that eventually, because the playing field is slightly leveling now, and so if you do have a good story to tell, the inroads into getting that story out, or at least the threshold, that may meet you into, making it whatever level of difficulty it is to getting it out, is lessening. So as far as black charactered comics and black fiction, horror, fantasy, what have you, it looks like the storytelling, the quality is finally being one of the more important determining factors, rather than the fact that it is, a black vehicle or however you want to delineate it from a
right
from a racial or sociological point of view.
And storytelling is key, because I mean, I had a lot of us in the comic book field didn't have a luxury of going to school or having a support system to help us teach. And I had the luxury of having several black men teach me my craft in addition to the schooling I went to. But I had Dennis Cowan, I had Michael Davis, I had my brother Gray helped me when I joined the studio. There was Larry Stroman who helped me in limited ways. But he came to New York too, because he's from Detroit. He's in Chicago now, but he helped me with tips whenever he came to New York to do comic conventions. So I had a bunch. I had an incredible support system. I had the brother that with the storyboards, with storyboards. So I had a bunch of black men who taught me. In addition, like I said, in addition to the schooling I had, helped me come up through my professional career, whether it's comics or storyboards. Helped me to navigate through storytelling, anatomy, composition, the business, all of that. And I was very fortunate. And a lot of us didn't have that, whether schooling or the support system. People taking time to help you with what you do.
Yeah, and being able to have those kind of mentors can't be underestimated in terms of importance in helping guide people and just letting people know the ropes, because not everything is obvious. Like you said, a lot of the racism, a lot of the prejudice is subsumed, and it's not overt, but yet it is just as prevalent, or it's just as powerful, or it's just as off-putting or holding people back.
Yes.
I want to thank you. We've run out of time.
Yeah.
Stephen, I really want to thank you, man, for doing this. I hope it wasn't too painful for you.
No, absolutely not.
I had a great time. Unfortunately, apparently Jarvis, who normally thanks everybody, is not online. He had to run out and go run an errand. Life has a way of catching up with all of us.
Oh, yeah.
So what I'd like to do is I want to thank everybody who listened. I want to thank everybody who supports this show. And I especially want to thank you for showing up. I definitely want to have you back here, as new things come out for you and you do other things. We'd love to have you back if that's okay with you.
No problem, of course.
And for those of you who listen, thank you for your support. Thank you for showing up. Those of you who picked this up as a podcast, you can always listen live. The show starts at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday evenings. I'm not exactly sure if we're going to have a show next week because, I don't see why we don't. After all, it is called Black Friday. So I fully plan to be here, or at least half of me. I'm half black. But please tell your friends, and very shortly after the show, The show gets kind of cleaned up and then posted up as a podcast. So anything that you've missed, you can always check out later. Do you have any final words that you'd like to toss out there, Stephen?
Yes, everyone, pick up my books, Brotherhood of the Fringe, Ajala, Series of Adventures. You can get those books on indieplanet.com, keyword Fringe or Ajala, AJALA.
And for those go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, also look out in December for Watching the Homes by New Paradigm Studios, Watching the Homes #6 by New Paradigm Studios, and written by Brandon Easton and drawn by myself and colored by J. David Ramos. And pick up the Voltron trade paperback 10 Lions series from issue 7 to 12 in December as well.
As if he doesn't have enough stuff going on.
Yeah.
And for those of you who want to check out Stephen's art, remember he's on DeviantArt, so it's Stephen Harris, STEVEN Harris.deviantart.com. And he's going to help us out by posting up his future appearances, so that if you are out and about or going to different towns, and if Stephen is going to be there, you'll be able to find out when and where he's going to be. For everybody who does this show, for everybody who listens, my name is William Hayashi. I want to thank you for listening and being here. And I'm going to close out the show. We'll pause for a few minutes, and then since I can't from Chicago, shut the show down. So thank you very much, Stephen.
I'm on Twitter and Facebook too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you put out a yeoman's work maintaining your contact with the people out there. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you, everybody. I want to wish everybody a good night.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we can always have, Jarvis is going to clean up the ending there, and he'll have to shut off the recording. I'm just going to let it record all night. It's like, when somebody calls your voicemail and they forget to hang up?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. So how was that? Was that fairly painless for you?
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, I'm glad you were here. Thank you for doing that. And like I said, when you get ready to slide on through Chicago, be sure to hit me up with a note so that we can get together. If not, there's a chance that if you're coming here for one of Turtel's things, you and I will be meeting up anyway, because I plan on trying to help him, push the Black Age thing as hard as I can.
Yeah, Turtel when he has it up there, he'll have events, and I'm sure we can. He'll have it up there for from Thursday to Sunday. Yeah.
That'll be great. And then the DuSable Museum is actually in my old neighborhood. I moved north for just because, but I go down there. I just missed him this summer for one of those events. Really, when I talk about two things, we have to support each other, and we also have to get in the habit of working to build our own audiences and our own customers.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to get normal mainstream help.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. All right, man. I know it's late. I don't know how late you stay up. I'm up till the crack of dawn. But Stephen, I want to thank you, man. It was really a pleasure. You made it very easy for me.
Oh, no problem, William. No problem.
And for everybody else listening, I'm going to head over to BSFS for a little while in case people want to ask any more questions. If you could just stop over to the chat room over there, or not, if you feel like it, or not. Well, some people do, some people don't. But I look forward to catching up with you soon, okay?
Okay.
All right, man. Take care.
All right, you too. You take it easy.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.